Hi, everyone. I am Chris Lopez. I am your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms. Welcome to another episode of Union or Bust. It seems like nothing is stopping the labor movement right now, and we have a special guest. We actually have Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Tell us a little about yourself.
Glad to be with you, Chris. Well, first, I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, in an immigrant community. My grandfather was the first African-American letter carrier in El Paso, Texas. He spoke fluent Spanish. My father was in the military. He traveled the world, was in 2 world wars. And my mother was one of the first 12 students led by the NAACP as a plaintiff integrating the University of Texas at El Paso. It was a big lawsuit, and her legacy is remarkable.
Well, that's outstanding. Now, the approval of labor unions right now is 71%. It's the highest since 1965. And with Gen Z, anyone born after 1995, it's 88%. So labor is on fire right now. You see what's going on around the world with UAW getting those outstanding raise increases. WGA strikes are happening all across the country. Now, I've been in labor a while, and I know that you've been a congresswoman for, I think, over 20 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, 25 years.
Oh, 25
Yes,
years. Wow, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And so the approval of labor unions in 2009 was about 40%. And now it's 71%. It's just growing and growing, everything going around the country. How much different is it now in elected office, now that the labor movement's so strong?
Well, the labor movement, first of all, is the primary movement that allows for a pathway into the middle class. And I've always been a very strong labor union supporter. Secondly, the fight for good paying jobs with benefits, with good retirements, all of what the American dream constitutes, the labor movement stands for. And I think right now here in California, I'm really proud because, of course, we're leading and unionizing California, and the rest of the country is finally catching up. And it's really remarkable because I want to just say to our brothers and sisters in the union movement, they've educated the public and members of Congress as to why this is a quality of life issue, and it's about really being pro-American because everyone deserves to have a decent, good-paying job with benefits to be able to take care of their family.
Well, that's awesome. On the Union or Bust podcast, we always say the main thing is to keep the main thing, kitchen table economics. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. However, the labor movement, like you said, is where people go to. And what I want to ask you is, sometimes we ask for legislation to be passed. Now, the governor vetoed unemployment benefits for striking workers. Now, Adam Schiff, and he is another candidate for U.S. Senate. You are running for Senate. Mm-hmm. Now, he is saying he wants to have unemployment benefits for striking workers to be federal law. Is that something that you would be for?
Absolutely. Workers pay into the unemployment compensation fund. They deserve to have unemployment compensation if they're out for whatever reason, including out to strike, because, of course, they're fighting for not only themselves but for other workers who deserve to be able to have the right to strike and not have to worry about losing their unemployment compensation. So I supported the state initiative, but also I support the federal.
That's awesome. And then AI, everyone's saying AI. And there was a bill that went to the governor's desk, and it was to require truck drivers, big rigs, to have at least a person in there, require a person to be in that truck to make it law. Would you be, and he vetoed it, would you be for that as well?
No, I was for that, and I'm still for that because we have to make sure that, first of all, workers don't lose their jobs as a result of AI. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the safety issues still haven't been resolved, and I'm very careful about supporting any vehicles, autonomous vehicles that don't have a driver in there, especially with trucks and cars on roads in heavy traffic areas. So yes, I supported that, and I hope that next time around it will be signed into law.
I always think of safety. I was like, having just no one in there. It really concerns me.
Yeah.
And but and those were vetoed. And moving forward, I know green jobs, a green economy. Now we have a lot of union members in coal mining, gas, oil, good union jobs. How would you balance, a green economy and the union jobs, a balance between quality union jobs and a green economy, a transition, if you will?
Sure, and I've had a lot of experience with this because in my district, in the Bay Area, we had 4 bases which closed. And in fact, we had to look at what we called the transition into the private sector into a commercial peace dividend type of economy. And so we had to make sure that there was what we call now a just transition. And I believe that as we have to wean ourselves from fossil fuels if we're going to protect this planet, but workers should not have to pay as a result of us moving forward in a more healthy and sound manner to preserve our planet. So I think that workers should be able to be trained. The just transition proposal in the bill that I supported, the Green New Deal, as well as in the Donald McEacham Environmental Justice for All, that's what it's called. We have provisions where workers would not lose their jobs. They would maintain their salary and benefits as they training as they are trained for this new green economy. And so we can't leave those gaps there with workers without any good paying jobs.
I'm always very open with my union members. I am a union representative, and a lot of them, their mental health is a huge issue right now. I battle alcoholism, anxiety, depression. I gave my life to the Lord. I haven't had drinking, going on 13 years. So, but my question is how important is mental health right now to the emphasis on it?
Yeah, the emphasis on mental health is very important. My profession, I'm not a lawyer, but I have my MSW. I'm a psychiatric clinical social worker.
Oh.
And I started Community Mental Health Center.
My sister was a social worker. So, very good.
And we understand the times that we're in, and we understand what's going on, and I do with regard to the suicide rates and the trauma. And there are a lot of issues since COVID, especially with our young people. And so I believe that we have to first invest more resources into mental health, but also we have to make sure that the parity, which we passed in law, is really upheld, because parity with mental and physical health should be reimbursed by insurance companies in terms of the treatment. And we have to have a new model of mental health services where people feel comfortable in going to see a mental health counselor or going for some type of intervention. When I had my mental health service, I didn't even call it my mental health clinic. I didn't call it a mental health clinic. I called it Community Health Alliance for Neighborhood Growth and Education, Change Incorporated. And that was because I wanted to reduce the stigma so that people who were depressed, on edge, anxious, whatever the issues were, they felt comfortable in coming. And then I was able to train people. You don't have to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a social worker to be able to learn the skills of that allow you to be able to be a counselor or a therapist. But at the same time, what I learned also was a lot of the mental health stress had to do with the social determinants, like people didn't have child care. Okay, some people were living on the streets. Some people needed a job. And so quite naturally, you're going to have some issues, right? Stress,
or
anxiety.
60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck.
Paycheck. Here in California, 40 million people, 20 million are living paycheck to paycheck.
Wow.
So what I did was, in the model of the clinic that I established, we had a training program for people who did not have a degree, but who were trained to be able to help people with their daily needs. Like, oh, so this person is depressed because they have 3 kids and don't have a job. So let's see if we can help find a job at the same time that we're doing the therapy or the counseling.
Yeah.
And it has to be culturally and linguistically appropriate. And right now, we see how mental health is playing out and destroying many, many families.
And, we're to transition over with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict going on right now. And you were in Congress, one of the few Congress people, one of the few elected officials on the federal level that is for a ceasefire. Also, going back, you've been in Congress. You were around in Congress during the Iraq War, and how. My question is, do you think, when you were getting pushback during that time, because it just seemed like that everyone was saying weapons of mass destruction, and do you think in a way now we have the ceasefire movement, everything what's going on, do you think the media in some ways is manufacturing consent for war?
September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States.
I never know what the media is up to. I can just tell you, I believe that, when I voted against, but there were two authorizations. Mm-hmm. The one after the horrific events of 9/11, where I was the only one who voted against it. And then fast forward the next year, it was the Iraq authorization. Mm-hmm. And we were told lies. There were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There weren't. We knew that. Democrats knew it. Republicans knew it. Mm-hmm. But they decided, and President Bush wanted to go after Saddam Hussein, and this was the perfect time to do that, even though they lied to the American public. So I was able to then talk to other members and tell them, based on I voted against the first one and the only one, I knew what was taking place in members' minds. So we were able to work to get more Democrats to oppose that authorization. But you cannot have any authorization that is open-ended. Mm. These authorizations established an open-ended framework for any president to go to war at any time, any place, forever. I call it forever wars. And so now I'm trying to repeal those authorizations with some Republican support. And I've gotten it through Congress a couple of times. And fast forward to now, we have to really be very careful in how and what we do as it relates to issues of war and peace, and what we support or what we don't support. And yes, we have to condemn the Hamas attacks on Israel. And Israelis deserve the right to live in security. That's a given, and terrorist organizations should be dealt with. No one, I don't think that I've talked to, who are calling for a ceasefire support Hamas. Come on. Mm-hmm. Well, we want this prosecuted in a way where 11,000 plus civilians whose lives have been taken, many, many thousands of children in harm's way being killed, that's unacceptable.
And I'm thinking of trauma. This is, the Vietnam War was the very first war that was televised. What's the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you see it on all the platforms. People sharing stories, the horrific stories on both sides. And do you think, this is a mental health issue for everyone? What's kind of going on? This is impacting people in different ways.
Yeah, I know it is. I know it is because it really is sad, first of all, and people are grieving. Mm-hmm. And as I said, during the horrific events of 9/11, you don't make political people and leadership, people who are elected, don't make critical decisions when you're mourning and grieving.
Absolutely.
That's psychology 101. So yeah, the trauma is grieving, sad, fearful. People don't know what's going on, really. I mean, this war could end up a regional war. Then what? It's very scary, and so that's why we have to contain it and call for a ceasefire and make sure that Israel is secure and not mess up a path to peace and a path where there can be peace, security, and justice for the Palestinians and for the Israelis.
Mm-hmm. I think about there's so many things that are out of our control. Like go back to COVID. There were a lot of legislation on state levels, federal levels, guaranteeing, benefits during COVID. And to me, I'm a big advocate of Medicare for all. I think everyone should have health care. And some things are beyond our control. No one could control COVID. No one can, we don't have control on necessarily what's going on in Israel, Palestine. And it's almost like, Medicare for all. This is a mental health issue. I think it's very traumatic for people. And I'm glad that, kind of, explaining, being more articulate. But Americans and the entire country, I believe they're scared right now.
Yeah, and let me tell you, you talk about trauma. Again, born in El Paso, Texas, but I do a lot on immigration issues. And so when Donald Trump decided to separate children from their families, I went all over the country and saw these children traumatized, saw their parents traumatized. Can you imagine when these children grow up, how they're going to hate America for what they did with their parents and themselves? Some kids still haven't been reunited. And so we have to be careful in how we move forward, because you're creating more anger. And that's what I fear for as it relates to the Palestinians and the Israelis. If this does not end soon, you're going to have more anger, more terrorists that are going to be created behind what's taking place. And I don't want to see that for Israel, and I don't want to see that for the Palestinians.
Well, I appreciate that. And we always like to end the podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to say or add? We are the hottest labor podcast in San Diego. Now, we are in LA today at the Westin Hotel, Union Hotel, by the way.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, let me tell you, what I'll say is this. I've always been a person who has not only voted on behalf of our brothers and sisters in the labor movement, but I've been out there on strikes and picket lines forever. I had the privilege to know C.L. Dellums. If you don't know who he is, he was the first African American who led a union. He established the Brotherhood of Pullman Porters for the trains years ago, and I met him. He was the uncle of my former boss and the person who preceded me in Congress, Ronald B. Dellums. So I want people to know those names because he was an African American labor leader who taught me a lot. I was arrested on a picket line with the ILWU, boycotting ships coming in from South Africa. We decided, and the ILWU decided, that they were not going to allow them to be undocked at the Port of Oakland. So I was out there picketing with the ILWU and got arrested as a result of that.
Wow.
And so my life has been about supporting working men and women, the right to unionize, but also if the powers that be aren't listening, then I'm out there on the picket line. And I've helped negotiate many, many strikes and helped bring both sides together, and still working with Unite Here with a couple of hotel issues, working with SEIU. I work with a lot of unions to try to make sure that justice is done. And so I just want to thank you for giving me a chance to.
And I heard your chief of staff used to be a UFCW member.
Oh, yes.
Oh, well, that's great.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And to this day, I will not go to a checkout counter without an employee checking me out. That's my protest on technology as it relates to the union members losing jobs as a result of these self-checkout. So that's just my own personal protest.
It's like it's a personal protest. It's like, we don't work here.
Yeah. I won't do it. You'll never see me checking anything out, scanning. I'm going to wait in a long line.
And we don't know autonomous trucks.
No.
They require, there's just so
no.
much going on. But we really appreciate having you on this podcast.
Okay.
And I am Chris Lopez. I am your union brother on TikTok. I'm going to say good night.
Good night.